Hi guys and girls on YouTube, and welcome to my channel. In this video we're going to be taking a look at an unusual and small Murphy table radio. Now this is unusual by the fact of the construction of the cabinet, so we'll take a look at that in a minute. But the model number is a U502, it's in a red case, and this is the first radio that Murphy produced that was FM only. And it dates from about May 1959. Now, in order to tell you a bit more about this radio, because obviously it's before my time, I've had to search through the loft and I've had to get out my vintage copies of Murphy News. So let's get the back off the radio first and I'll show you why it's so unusual. So, if we turn this around, well, let's turn it upside down first. First you can see the feet are actually part of the cabinet. These are integral. It's an integral moulding in the cabinet. That's upside down. Let's just turn it the right way up. That's the model plate there, U502. And if we go around the back, I say back, but there's no removable back panel. All this cabinet is just a one-piece moulding, and what you do is you undo that single screw there, and then the whole of the chassis is actually fastened onto this front, and the whole of the chassis comes out, just leaving the one piece back behind. Now that's the obviously the aerial input for the FM dipole. As you can see, somebody's modified this in the past because there's a 6.3mm headphone jack fitted there, so we're going to have to take that off because I think that rather spoils the appearance. But the first thing we're going to do before we do anything is cut off this 5 amp round pin plug, because as nice as it looks, have nothing that plugs into. Right, so that's the one piece cabinet removed, and it's only held in with one single Phillips screw. What a fantastic idea that is. Just imagine if TVs were like that, instead of undoing 50-60 screws on some plasma TVs. So let's move over here to the radio. It's lying down. It's a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 valve, FM only, very compact. And as you can see, it's received some attention in the past because not only is this socket fitted there, I can see a capacitor there that's been added, that's come from Radio Spares. Now I don't know whether that's been added because this one's open circuit. We'll have to check that out. But whoever fitted the socket knew what they were doing, because they've not just fitted a socket across the speaker, they've actually fitted there an isolation transformer, which I think is also a Radio Spares part. So definitely somebody with safety in mind that knew what they're doing that added that. But I'm actually going to take that off and get rid of that transformer. I presume that one there is the audio output, Celestian speaker. Now I'm not sure how this comes out the front. I think, or I would imagine, you undo 2 screws there and there. But before we get that far, let's just have a quick look in the Murphy News, because that knows a bit more about this receiver than I do. Right, so that's the Murphy News. It's volume 34, number 5. It's dated May 1959. This was a publication that was given to Murphy dealers. 20 pages, about 6 new receivers. So the first one we come to there is the one we've got, the U502, which is the first Murphy for VHF only. There is another one that looks just like this, the which one is it, the 504 model, which is actually long wave medium wave. And the long wave medium wave cost £12 and 12 shillings, whereas the FM one was dearer at £14, 3 shillings and 6 pence. So I'll just move over this very slowly Now I've just noticed there 2 dial lamps at 19 volts each. Well, that could be a problem if they're gone. We might have to do some sort of modification to this. But anyway, I've not actually plugged it in yet, so let's hope them aren't gone. Right, so let's just move a few pages on. And there we go, that's the technical write-up on the one we've got, the U502. I'll just move over this slowly in case anybody wants to, right, if anybody wants to stop the video and read all this for themselves. And there's some information there about the VHF circuits. Right, so I think the best thing to do now is to picture there, look at the Murphy dealers back in the 50s. I think the best thing to do now is to get this all disassembled, and we'll have a look what we've actually got, or what's actually wrong with it. Just before we do the disassembly, and this confirms that has definitely been added on, you can see that metal bar there, and that goes to the hole in the back, the screw in the back screws through there. If we look at the disassembled picture in the Murphy News, that's the screw point A. You can see that metal bar there, and there is no isolation transformer there, so that is definitely afterthought. And also that capacitor's not there either, which I thought that had been added on anyway because it's a radio spares. So right, let's move on to the disassembly now. Find out how all this lot comes out before we power it up. Right, so just in case anybody's wondering, this is obviously how you change the dial lights, one there and one there. You just pull the dial off. Wax paper in there, that'll have to go. Now to get this out of the chassis, you've got to desolder the speaker, and I've also desoldered the end of that cap, which is also going to stop it coming out. But here's another unusual thing I've spotted, an internal fuse. Now how many valve radios have you seen that have an internal fuse? Not many, not for this age anyway. Right, now with the speaker desoldered, we can actually lift all this off the front. There we go, that's the underside view. Now interestingly enough, the switch on the front, and the long wave medium wave version, that was the long wave medium wave selector, but on this one it appears to be just a switch tone control, switching a capacitor across the primary of the audio outputs, the audio output transformer. But right, I can also see there's 1 or 2 Hunt's caps, and they've cracked, so they'll let moisture in, so we're going to have to change them anyway. But I might just check the main smoothing capacitor, and might just go for a power up when we reformed it if it's alright, and then just take it from there. Right, so the main electrolytic cans are 50 plus 50. Right, so one section of it is okay, but if you look at the red section, the effective series resistance is more than 40 ohms. So the red one is almost certainly dried up, and that's why somebody else has added an extra cap on. Right, so we'll just get a little bit of power running through these caps first before we do anything else. Right, so you get the general idea. We're reforming the caps. I'm not going to sit here with the camera and do it for ages. Let's come back to it in a bit. Right, so some while later, that's about as good as it's going to get. And don't forget, we're only reforming the aluminium oxide layer on the capacitor so it doesn't explode when we plug it in. Because the plan is I'm going to replace that capacitor. So this is just a safety precaution so we don't have a big bang when we plug it in. Right, well, we're nearly ready for plugging in. So this is all the bits out the radio. I've got a couple of crocodile clips on the speaker. It's standing up in like a serviceable position. Let's see what happens when we power it up. Well, that's a good start. The dial lights are both lit, so we don't have to worry about replacing them. Right, well, the answer to what happened is absolutely nothing. It's on, it's working, but we don't have any audio. There's no crackling from the volume control. I've tested the speaker's alright. Now, I do have the 1959, 1960 radio and TV servicing, and that will give us a diagram for the U502. So we're going to be concentrating here around the 10PL12 audio output valve. The first thing I need to do is establish it's got an anode voltage, because it could well be that this transformer's open circuit, and then if it is, we're in big trouble. Right, well, that was nice and easy. There's no anode voltage at the triode pentode audio output valve, simply because there's no voltage across that reservoir capacitor, and in fact it's the fuse that's open circuit, F1 250 milliamp. Right, so due to the length of time it's going to take to find the right fuse, for the minute I'm just going to put 150 milliamp one in. I know it should be 250, but I can't see it drawing more than 150. But that'll just do as a quick test, because it could be ages looking for the right fuse through this lot. Now, I would imagine it's probably the grid coupling capacitor that's causing the pentode to draw excessive anode current, and that's probably the reason why the fuse has gone. But it won't do any harm to run this for a few minutes with a high current. Right, so as you can hear now, we do have a hissing noise through the speaker, so it's looking good. But I've just made a check on that grid voltage, and that's the problem. So we've got 60 volts here on the triode of the preamplifier, but actually on pin 3, the grid of the 10PL12, we've actually got 14 volts positive. Now the grid's got to be 0, otherwise this passes excessive current. So the first thing we need to do before we do anything else is change C44 0.01, which is going to be this one here, the metal mite. So we get that changed, and then we can get an aerial to this and see what we've got. Right, so just as I expected, it's leaky. I've got the analog meter here set to times 1K. Let's just touch on the end of there, and I'll show you on the meter. So can you see there, we have, it is actually a very, very high resistance, but you can see it's leaky. Right, so let's just whip one of them in. Right, so now having found the most probable cause of fuse failure, it's a good idea just to check the value of the cathode bypass resistor to make sure it hasn't risen in value, passing excess current. So that's the new grid 1 capacitor in. The cathode bypass resistor is actually behind the capacitor. I should have checked that before I put the cap in, but not to worry, we can still get to it. It's right under there, 330 ohms. Right, so look at that for a result.
to being peaceful
Do you think
and
it was
trying
too provocative? Was it too provocative?
No, I think that it's a regime pretending that they don't understand how our democracy works. Nancy Pelosi is not an executive member. It's not like...
Right, so looking good. There is, of course, quite a lot of work still to do. As a precaution, I'm going to change all these Hunt's caps because they've all cracked, so they'll all be letting moisture in. Even though it's working, changing these will improve the performance of the radio. So there's there's about 4 there. There's some on the other side. Also, I'll have to repair that TCC capacitor, and there's a lot of dirt that needs cleaning out. And of course, I can take the speaker out of that, and I can wash all that to make it all look nice and brand new. All right, guys and girls. We'll come back to this in a bit then when I've finally completed it. Right, so here's where we're up to so far. I've got 3 new caps here on the back of the board. I've put there's 1 cap in there which doesn't look too out of place, and I've also used, for the 10NFs, I've used 2 Mullard mustards, and as you can see, I've retained the green sleeving that was on the original ones. So there's no more caps on this side that need replacing. Now we need to turn attention to the other side, and I'll show you why we replace these caps as well. So if we take the one that was in here, the 0.04, which is the big one, I don't know if that shows up on the camera. I'll get something to point with, but you can actually see just there. It's coming to focus now. Can you see that crack there? Well, the problem is when the crack in there, eventually over time that will let moisture into this capacitor, and that will become leaky. So let's just put that on the meter and see what we've got. So if you look at that connected to my digital meter, you can see we've got a leak of about 12.7 meg. So while that might not seem a big deal, a leak of 12 megs, you put that in a radio and it's got 100 volts across it, the chances are that leak's going to increase, and we're going to end up with more problems. So the best thing to do is just change all these Hunt's caps, because they're all the same age. The chances are, if they've not cracked now, they'll crack in the future, and it's just a good idea to change the whole lot. I've tested this electrolytic there, this Dubilia. That's absolutely fine, so we're going to leave that in for show. But as you can see, the 3 caps on the top are changed. Now all we need to do is move to the back, because there's 1 or 2 more Hunt's caps down here that need changing. So that's going to be the next job, changing these other ones. I have, of course, cleaned all this up as well. I've hoovered all the dust off it. I've cleaned the metalwork. I've very, very carefully cleaned the valves without rubbing off the white printing, so they're all nice and shiny. Well, that's one of the cases on the Hunt's cap, and it's just completely disintegrated. When I tried to get it out, it's gone so brittle. Right, so that's all the Hunt's changed, mainly with Mullard mustards, but I've also put a couple of modern ones in as well, because you're not going to see them anyway when this is back in. So we're just down to the switch tone control now, the wax paper 0.02. Now this has to be a high voltage one. This is rated for 500 volt, and the reason it has to be a high voltage is because it's actually connected across the primary of the speaker transformer. So being an inductive circuit, there's going to be quite a voltage rise across there, so we need 500 volts minimum in that position. So let's just get that in, and then what we're going to do is just power this up and make sure everything's still working before we carry on any further.
Yeah, I know, she was...
Right, so we're still working alright.
She wants to...
Now, it's always a good idea when you're doing any restoration is don't change too many bits in one go. Change a few parts and then switch it on and make sure it still works. And then that way, if you've made a mistake somewhere, you'll know exactly where you've made the mistake. Whereas if you change everything in one go and it doesn't work, you don't actually know what you've done wrong. So we're still up and running. So the next thing to do now is to get this can out, and we need to repair that and take out that one that somebody's added in. Right, so now we're on with the HT reservoir and smoothing capacitor. Right, so that's the old cap out. Now very, very carefully we've got to take off the base, which I've already done. That's the bit that holds it to the chassis. And then we've got to extract the middle out of that, because we're still going to use the old can for some sort of originality. Right, so that's the seal off the bottom. All we've got to do now is just extract the insides out of that. Right, so that's the old capacitor unwrapped. If you look in there, we've just got an empty shell now. So I'm going to put some modern equivalents in there, but the only ones I can find are 33 microfarad. So if we strap two together, that'll give us 66 microfarad. We're going to put that straight after the rectifier, but first I need to check if this rectifier is capable of pushing into a 66 microfarad capacitive load. Right, so over to the internet, and it says here the reservoir capacitor specified 100 microfarad maximum, so we'll be absolutely fine with 66 microfarad straight after the rectifier. Right, so that's the new capacitor made up. As you can see, I've strapped three together. We've got 133 and 166 because I've paralleled up two of the sections there. So we'll take that now and we pop that into that can, and as you can see, that's a nice tight fit. Now all we've got to do is just reassemble these, drill some holes in here, get them wires out, and just put it all back together. So, two little holes drilled in there where we can bring the wires out to these terminals, and the earth we're going to bring through that big hole. Like that. Right, so that then is the fully refurbished two-section reservoir capacitor. All we've got to do now, get it back into the radio and just make sure that we get the 66 microfarad section to the cathode of the rectifier, and we'll get the 33 to the other side of the HT smoothing resistor there. So that should be absolutely fine. Let's get it back into there now. Right, so that is back in place. I've just twisted these and just soldered them to the chassis, just like it came out of the factory all them years ago. Right, so there we go, perfectly soldered back in. The only job to do now is just try it once more, make sure everything's working, and then we need to clean all the case up. I'll take the speaker out so I can wash the front in the sink, and just reassemble it all then. Right, so I've just tested again, it's working absolutely fine. I've taken that out because we don't need that now. I've just taken the speaker off there. The last job that remains is to get all this cleaned up now and then reassemble it. So, a bit of spray on there, and then we'll clean the grooves with a toothbrush and wash it off under the sink. Right, so we're just starting the reassembly now. I've removed the isolation transformer along with the capacitor, and of course 50 years of dirt's been cleaned off. So the next time you see this in a few minutes, it'll be all up and running and it's back in its case.
Of what we call more selective, more competitive institutions and courses available in clearing.
Just a supermarket sort of thing. So it would be ideal if you could have a bit of support from the government, you know, maybe relax a few taxes and things like that on feed and such like that. I think on that as well, I think your boss definitely come and giving you a few cold ones at the end of the day. That definitely helps if my boss is listening. Yeah, no, definitely.
Newsbeat.
Thank you. This heat is affecting all of us in different... Seriously, in an accident on a roller coaster at Legoland in Germany. That from media there in Germany.
So there we go, guys and girls. That's the 63-year-old Murphy U502, the first model to be fitted with FM. Now the case had lost its sparkle a little bit, and also there's a bit of a crack in it there, but which I'm not too bothered about. But the case had lost its sparkle. I buffed it up with some Servicol Refurb 140. That's why it's looking nice and shiny.
Continue to give evidence. She accuses him of controlling and coercive behaviour against her between August 2017 and November 2020. He's also accused of assaulting her, and it's important to say he denies those charges.
This is the switch tone control.
More details.
Telling the jury that living with
Bass,
Ryan Giggs during
treble.
lockdown was utter hell.
There's something coming from a book. I can't say too much on this one because I can't spoil.
Alright, guys and girls, many thanks for watching my channel, and I'll catch you in the next video.
A 5-star film through and through. You are just going to be watching through your hands.